Blenders out there in YouTube land. It's Rob with part 2 of the restoration of that Remington rolling block. So I got the parts separated as you saw in the last video, and all I've done since then is just put them in a pot of boiling water, and I also steamed the barrel in action in that same pot of water. I just use a metal tube, just something you get from the hardware store for, you know, ventilation or something like that, nothing crazy. So let's have a look at the small parts. These are the small parts. Let me pause while I get that in better focus. Alright, so we got everything in focus here. And let's have a look. So you can see this bright orange finish, and these parts look worse than when I got started. But that's the fun part about doing this kind of restoration. The conversion process will make your parts look really bad, but when you get to the carding process, they're going to start looking amazing. So here's the trigger guard. All looking pretty nasty, huh? The butt plate looked bad to begin with, so we'll see what happens here. I'm curious. But that's those. Oops. The receiver and barrel are here. So you can see it looks worse, but that's how you know it's working. Pretty rough looking. Just going to set that aside. But what I'm going to do before I get to the carding process, which is actually really quick, I want to work on the wood. The wood is really dirty. I mean, that's the ultimate thing about this. And you can see there's house paint on it. You can see more house paint here. So cleaning alone won't get rid of the paint. So we're going to have to physically get in there and get rid of that paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a knife. And all I'm going to do is super carefully get in here with my reading glasses on. You do not want to take the surface finish off. This has been dyed, you can tell. And I do have some Danish oil. All I'm doing is super carefully. If you're really worried about this, which is understandable, you can try using some hard plastic, something like a credit card, and scraping it off. But I'm confident enough in my knife skills. And I can see the paint did absorb a bit of the finish, but that's okay. Steel wool. Well, this is super it has no soap, detergent, or probably a bit of oil in it, so I have to clean out the I don't really care about oil, but I'm going to be with no pressure. Just rubbing the surface back and forth. Alright, so that is now clean of paint and dirt. And the reason why I'm doing these first, actually this one, okay, that's nothing on there. The reason why I've done these first is because I want to get a coat of Danish oil on them, which is right here. My brush. This Danish oil does have a bit of a tint to it, but it's the same color as the stock. Guys, I'm going to put this away, and then I'm going to set up the carding machine, and we'll get to carding this metal, and you'll see magic happen before your stinky little eyes. Okay, so this is a carding wheel. It's a steel brush, but it's incredibly fine. Like, I guess showing you that steel wool, it's pretty much that, but on a drum. And the trick to this kind of stuff is you don't want to run it too high of a speed. And you, like I said, you could totally get away with using the steel wool. If you could find my reading glasses, that would be better. Sorry guys, let me pause. I lost my glasses. Alright, I was saying, you could totally use the steel wool. This just makes things a lot quicker and better. Better-or-er. Alright, so you want to run this thing, but you don't want to run it too quick, and you probably won't be able to hear me, and I'm going to turn on the fan to get this stuff out of my face. So here we go. practically brand new. That nice kind of gunmetal color to them. I mean, look at that little side plate. Look at that. And these don't even have any oil on them yet. So the next part is, I mean, there's the pin, look at that. So the next part is getting in there with some steel wool and a little wire brush and working all the little nooks and crannies, like up under the hammer and stuff like that, and getting those all cleaned up. Everything else is going to have to go into a bin, like so. Because at this point, these have zero protection on them. All the oil has been removed. The rust has been converted into ferric oxide. So in order to, yeah, so they have to soak in oil now. So for that, I'm just going to throw some motor oil in there. And look at the trigger. And practically brand new. You can see where you need to get in there with steel wool. Again, that super fine stuff. And all you're doing is you're just knocking the rust off the surface. You're not sanding. You're not polishing. You're just wiping. If you want, you can speed this process up. Sometimes I'll use a Dremel with a nylon brush, which is probably what I'll do for some of these parts. It just makes things go a little bit quicker. bad. Alright, so I've done this before. Oops. Number 9. And golden mink oil. Why golden mink oil? Because I learned almost by accident how good golden mink oil is. It's just oil and wax. Not a lot to it. So, and you're gonna get dirty. Have fun getting dirty with the oil. A lot of it. You're going to want a lot of oil. Like I said, you completely strip this down to bare metal. So there's no protection. This could flash rust almost immediately, especially on a day like today. High humidity, high temperature. And then you end up rusting your rifle by mistake. Right. To this barrel. Ow! That mug got me. That mug. I will say one thing about the amount of oil I've added into the barrel, which is quite a bit. Just make sure that you give the barrel a thorough cleaning, or else you could have an obstructed barrel, which is not good, as we all know. Alright guys, oh my god, I look horrible, don't I? It's hot. I'm done for today. I will be back. So I'm going to go back to this shot because I don't like my face. Alright guys, done for today. I will be back tomorrow for final assembly, and I will edit and post this video ASAP. Stay tuned, which will just be a blink of an eye for you. Bye guys.